I have argued that in the minds of those who are harmonizing the four Gospels in the New Testament, don't therefore comprehend the Gospel of Mark being placed in the hands of the author or authors of the Gospels of Matthew and Luke, which includes the Gospel that I was originally named after. So I was named after a plagiarism, essentially. So the harmonists won't have an eye for plagiarism. You could plagiarize anything, say anything to them, and they go, once they go, fuck. So someone just had the Gospel of Mark in their hands, and then they wrote Matthew and Luke 10 to 15 years later. And then John, which is like the one that you would write on acid and ecstasy and speed, is written in 95 AD. So they won't have an eye to catch briberies, plagiarisms, fake, falsified documents. In fact, they'll think that these farces save them and make them immortal. And they'll go to outer space when they're dead and live forever. If they give 10% of their income to a tax-exempt church. So, the failure to be rational that results from and is proliferated in the attitudes of people who do harmonize these four Gospels are the perfect minds to have been ripened for the imposition of unjust attrition against the bisexual rights movement. Because the simplest thing that a person could say, if they are thinking in naturalistic terms, they'll agree in debates. Theists will say, well, we invoke the supernatural because our natural world cannot explain these details. But the best explanation is that Jesus of Nazareth was potentially at least open to the defense of what we are today calling the bisexual rights movement. That biphobia was fucking everywhere at that time in history. Biphobia plus an unseen male deity controlling everything. How interesting. The churches will teach you that you are watched by this God who commands wars, and he's watching you masturbate when you do. I was like, well, that's fucking rude. Christianity should at least introduce, the right to tell God to fuck off at certain times. Go and watch X-Files or something. It's a great religion to disprove. But, you see those traits in Jesus. He had the long hair. He had the potential to get suicided in his day. Because rights weren't good enough. And that's all that a person needs to say. But then the story is a tragedy, of course. There's no good that came from it. In fact, the story of the Gospel of Mark, just taken on its own, is a tragedy that it actually implies unjust attrition and illegal activity on behalf of the monarch at the time. And so the monarch wouldn't like that because it's like a shit on their face. Like, how can you do that? How can you do it to someone? 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 There's no answer except that the king and queen were fuckwits. But the king and queen don't want to look like fuckwits, so in comes the story of him flying into outer space, living forever. Whoa! They still didn't hoist the flag for Diana in our time. The sooner naturalistic terms obliterate, the naturalistic arguments obliterate what the Christians are trying to do, the better. So the question I would have for the sovereign probably would be, do you as the sovereign take credit for creating Earth's human mistakes and errors? Like, You know, if you establish a reign by saying, well, let's tell all the people that being created in the image of God meant their ancestors inbreeded in a garden, and eating an apple caused the downfall of the whole race. So a man had to be nailed to a cross to set the record straight for someone eating one apple. I think the Aborigines have, per contrast, a more interesting what is it? The rainbow serpent. He seems to have a bit more style about him. Like in the dream time of the Aborigines, the rainbow serpent doesn't give a fuck how many apples you eat, and you do not have to be proud or be humble yourself to the notion that your ancestors had to inbreed in order for you to be here. So I think good on the Aborigines in that regard. You know, if a woman goes to eat an apple, fuck, it's not the end of the fucking world. Benjamin Franklin said something about that. It's a strange religion indeed that a man had to be nailed to a cross to pay the price for the sins of eating an apple. So, you know, she established her reign by telling the masses that. And what happens when someone like Rolf Harris, you know, his painting is in Buckingham Palace, the Queen is holding his painting up and displaying it and looking at it in passing and when she's walking, and, you know, using a Bronze Age Christian theism to bolster her reign of the country. So I think, well, that's amazing the way you're running this country. Yeah, what amazing things to teach people. You know, make them sexually sick to start out, and then they'll be ready to help you invade 57 countries. 57 countries. How amazing. So what is the reign, the sovereignty in her mind? I always wonder about that. You know, and did this story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden and their children inbreeding, so we could be fortunate enough to be alive right now. Did that story sicken the mind of Rolf Harris over years and years? Because he obviously worked to impress the Queen, the painting being evidence of that. So he's obviously thinking along her lines in his mind to some extent. So he's thinking, what, Adam and Eve's kids, they reach puberty and start fucking each other. So Rolf Harris figures it's okay to, you know, break out the extra leg. And now he's in jail. So do we thank Queen Elizabeth II for the creation of Rolf Harris? I will not formally, officially state that I have affected Rolf Harris in any way, shape or form in my country. Anyway. Deteriornation.
Holy shit! Oh, fuck! Holy shit!
And I'm just going to need you to say to the camera your name, your title, and I inject Luke Banton with a drug that affects the functioning of his penis.
I'm probably not going to use that wording.
Well, those are the facts surrounding the medication you're administering.
Well, that's not particularly something I need to say, though, is it, Luke?
It is. For the Ombudsman.
For the Ombudsman. What else have you been up to with your time, Luke?
Just the line will do.
So, you happy if just go on the right side this time, Luke?
You could say impairs the functioning. Smiling.
Luke, well, this has certainly never happened to me before, Luke.
Right. Well, I've spoken to many people on antipsychotics who aren't fucking.
Right. You put that down for a sec so we can sort this out.
No, I'm filming it and I'm filming the injection too.
Okay.
What exactly do you suppose stopping the effects of the amygdala does to a person? Do you know what the amygdala is?
It's a portion of the brain, yes.
What's it concerned with?
Amygdala is it emotional regulation?
That's right, emotional regulation. And when you stop that emotional regulation, what happens?
What do you think happens, Luke?
Well, I already know what happens. I'm asking you if you know what happens.
I'm not sure what happens with yourself, Luke, but...
But you're here to do what?
Pardon?
But you're here to do what?
I'm giving you your depot injection, Luke.
That does what?
Luke, if you're going to do this, you're going to have to talk to one of the psychiatrists, my friend.
I'd love to. I've already written them letters. I give Luke Banton a drug that inhibits the effectiveness of his penis. Will you please say it to the camera?
Luke. We're going to go on the right side for you, mate. Cheers, bud. You're just about here, right? Can we give your toes for me? Good man. Hold on. I'll put the stick on.